Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Elmhurst City Hall. This is Monday, March 9th, 2009. The Elmhurst City Council is meeting this evening as a committee of the whole. I would ask the city clerk to please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Regan, absent. Gutenkopf.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Rose, absent. Gow.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
Moriarty.
Here.
Nybo, absent. Sapaniak.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Lomnicki, absent. Mulliner.
Here.
10 present, 4 absent.
10 present, 4 absent. We do have a quorum. Okay, very good. It does not state so on our agenda for this evening, but it has been my habit in the past, since we have men and women in the armed forces going in harm's way for our country today, even as we speak. I would ask you to all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I think it's the least we could do, given what folks are going through on our behalf and on behalf of the country. Okay, very good. We're here this evening to begin our review of the 2009-2010 annual operating budget. Mr. Borchard and his staff are in place and ready to go. We have underneath the main agenda here a line item agenda that will show you the order in which we intend to take things. These agendas are usually somewhat optimistic and allow us to get as deep into the evening as we can maintain alertness and follow along in the conversation. We have several opportunities here in the next 3 to 4 weeks to conduct our budget review, but as you're going to hear from Mr. Borchard in a moment, we do have a statutory requirement to pass our budget, and so we need to be diligent about our work. We need to keep on track. We need to keep moving forward. We move through this at the rate of which we ask questions, which is not designed for me necessarily to ask you not to ask questions, but on the other hand, if you can deduce from the conversation what is going on, please do so. So, Mr. Borchard, sir, you have the floor. Please tell us what is our work product that you're trying to get out of us this evening, and walk us through it as much as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council and folks that perhaps are watching in. I'd just like to do a quick review. We did do an overview last Monday night, and would remind the City Council that there is an 8-page summary which begins on page 1. I think those 8 pages, at least it was an attempt to summarize the following 480-page budget book, which is obviously a very detailed document with a lot of information. But if you wish to major on majors and be strategic, the 8-page summary provides that overview. The entire budget is on the city website. You could review the 8-page summary or the details as you wish. In the 8-page summary, there is a listing of the major components of the budget reductions. As you recall, to achieve the mayor council message and the objective of a contribution to fund balance next year, there was a need to reduce over $4 million in what otherwise would be appropriate expenditures, meeting previously acceptable levels of service to allow that end result, the end result being at the end of the upcoming fiscal year, with the constraint of no new revenue sources. So that is the overview of the budget. How did the city staff go about achieving a $4 million reduction? We used as a litmus test, if you will, that to stay in the budget, it needed to be towards achieving the 2 core values of maintaining the value of the community's infrastructure, all of the city's infrastructure that supports the community, understanding that that is vital for the success long-term of the community and vital for the most cost-effective expenditures going forward. And secondly, to maintain core public safety and core public works and support services. Core services first, and maintain full-time staffing that wishes to stay, if at all possible, in that full-time staffing is going to be needed to provide services going forward. A significant investment has been put forth in those full-time employees. We want to maintain that investment of infrastructure and maintain that investment in staffing going forward. We were able to do that, and would suggest that on page 104 is a graph that illustrates, a pie graph that illustrates in an overview perspective what is provided and what is and how it's provided. The general fund is the fund that I anticipate the council wishes to focus mostly on. That's the fund that there's been the $4 million in reductions and the area where most of our services are provided. If you look at the pie chart of where are the expenditures going, 50% is in salary, wages, plus employee benefits. 20% is in capital. That 20% you've looked at a bit as it's part of the 5-year capital expenditure program. This capital is the first year of the 5-year capital. Understanding that capital, what's left with salaries and wages are small percentages of what's left. In employee benefits, there's pension requirements, health insurance requirements. City Council has been, from a strategic perspective, authorizing just what's required relative to adjustments in those areas, and we've been negotiating with the unions as to a higher percentage of employee contributions for health and dental contributions. Contractual services is the next largest category. Contractual services provides for garbage collection, street sweeping, the DUCOM contract, the ambulance contract, mosquito control contract, and there's not much left there. My point being, the council has looked strategically at salaries and wages. You manage employee benefits as best as possible. We've got contract services that you're working on, likewise in a controlled fashion, and we talked about capital. So strategically, you're doing what needs to be done. What's left is reductions in the budget to achieve your objective of providing a contribution to fund balance next year. Would remind the council that the city staff did identify that the council would be looking at the rubbish rate. I know the Public Works Committee looked at that and has a recommendation, I believe, coming forward on a rubbish rate adjustment. The Finance Committee is looking at utility rates earlier this evening. There's a proposed parking fee adjustment that we would recommend be considered, and if approved at a time frame that would put that fee increase in line when the new parking structure proposed to be built would come online. So there's a increase in service, if you will, at least insofar as supply when that rate comes on board. On the property tax, the city staff is anticipating that there would be an adjustment of levy to cover police and fire pensions, and a 4.5% increase for the general fund. Absent that, it's a budget that that lives within the existing areas of revenue as projected. Mayor suggested I would overview what comes next, and that is next Monday is actually the City Council, the third Monday in March. It's by the budget calendar, the public hearing for the budget. That'll be part of the formal council meeting next Monday night. Would anticipate a workshop after the budget meeting, after the council meeting for budget considerations. This City Council must approve a budget before the end of the term, and we've identified that would occur on April 6th. That'd be actually the day before the election. I am here with staff to assist, as has been your past practice and request of us to go through the budget. Frankly, we'll be providing a bit of a different type of report for you, which will be to quickly identify the areas that will continue on, list the areas of service that are going to be reduced, and that there's not a lot left to really work on and talk about, take your questions. I guess with that general introduction would go then to the suggested lineup of reviews, which begins at the front of the budget with the administration and elected officials, pages 106 and beyond. As an example, we've reduced participation in the Suburban Hair Commission, made that zero. We've eliminated some of the memberships, but do maintain membership with the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference. That is about 80% of the membership line. Other memberships are with the International City Management Association, the National League of Cities, and the Illinois Municipal League. And frankly, the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, from my perspective, is a must-maintain membership in. They are the review agency for any city grants flowing to cities and villages in DuPage County. They rate those projects. It's critical that Elmhurst maintains that membership. There are other expenses that, frankly, the staff nor council can control in this area of the budget with police and fire pensions. Would say you'll see pensions in many areas of the budget. We're estimating police fire pensions to go up about 10%. The Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund is the pensions for the non-police fire employees of the city. In both cases, the police fire pension and the IMRF, a lot of pension payments come out of pension investments portfolios, as you've read about, heard about, have been significantly reduced. Therefore, all of these pensions need to, on a planned program, reestablish their investment portfolio. We anticipate in the IMRF that they'll be increasing the rates by a 10% next fiscal year, 12% the following year, and a 14% the year after. So I won't say those again. Those are factors, though, that are part of what the city staff has analyzed as they built the budget. Any questions?
No, pretty straightforward, Mr. Borchard. I'll just comment that the Suburban O'Hare Commission, what we're doing is dropping the dollar amount that's been plugged into the budget for a number of years now. The fact of the matter is we haven't actually spent any money on the Suburban O'Hare Commission for a number of years, and I'm going to say in round numbers 4 to 5. 5? 5, okay. That doesn't necessarily mean, well, you know, at some point they might press us for the money, and if we say no, they might throw us out. But I just wanted to make the point that that is not exactly the same as pulling out of the Suburban O'Hare Commission. We're just not putting the money in the budget. Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay.
I have one quick
Yeah,
question.
sure.
In the beginning of the budget, it states that you're taking 2 of the public works salaries and you're adding them into the general fund salaries? Or they're deducted from the,
We had to we had to stop charging a couple of public works employees to the motor fuel tax fund because of the lack of resources, financial dollars in the motor fuel tax fund, and charge those to the general fund. Part of, again, the pressure on the general fund. Strategically, the city is also looking at allocating, wherever possible, previously allocated employees to the general fund to other funds if it's at all justified and appropriate. In fact, Mr. Hughes spoke with the Public Works Committee earlier this evening in that a significant amount of one of the administrative assistants or secretaries in the Public Works group spends a lot of time on garbage collection, garbage processing of service requests, problems associated with organizing, managing, administering the garbage contract. We're therefore rolling some of that administrative salary into the cost of the garbage collection service so that the fees for garbage and the stickers for garbage cover that secretary a fair amount, a proper allocation of that secretary's time. So strategically, effort is being put forth to put employees and charge employees to the proper fund based on their actual work, but with the desire to offload from the general fund if it's justified.
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. All right, Ms. Borchert.
Page 109, Board of Police Fire Commission. Again, it's rather straightforward. Important commission that does the preparation of the eligibility list for police and fire hires and then for police and fire promotions. They're volunteer. They don't get any salary, and care is applied wherever and however possible to limit expenses.
Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
In regards to, and just to go off of what you just said, City Manager Borchert, they are not paid. My assumption is the full-time percentage that's being showed here is one of our staff personnel that attends the meetings or consults with them?
The Maryland's note is 30% of one of the HR staff.
Okay.
Right. Their function is mostly an HR function, almost entirely.
The commissioners get a $500 per year stipend to cover their expenses, not unlike the stipend the city council receives. I would strongly recommend that those stipends stay in place. Prior to those stipends being in place, volunteers were encouraged to submit expenses for the bills incurred in providing service, and the hassle and the problem of processing justified and appropriate pay requests was more costly in the long run than a very, very modest stipend. The stipends are judged to be quite comparable to stipends in other jurisdictions. They're fair, they're appropriate, they're justified, and frankly, it's much more cost-effective to provide a stipend than to process expense reimbursements.
Okay, follow up?
Yeah, thank you. The only other question I have on this page is on 109, 3052 professional services. Earlier, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, we got a breakdown of all the professional services, so I didn't see how what is stated here correlating on what we were distributed before. Could I get clarification on that?
In that line item are costs for polygraphs, costs for individual assessments for the candidates that have met the requirements that are on our list for police and fire, and also the actual promotional test services. So those are the three major components in there. And on the list that you're speaking of, I believe it's Laser and Associates, and I think it's FL Hunter are some of the services that are used for those assessments.
Okay, so it's pretty much a portion of one of those other professional services.
Right, exactly.
Understood.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Okay, Mr. Borchert.
Finances, pages 110, 112. reductions, cutbacks, hours in the collector's office, previously announced, continued, reduced. Anything else, Mrs. Marilyn?
Try to keep the mic close, guys, because it's got to get picked up.
This budget is primarily the accounting division, so we're talking about the handful of folks that are the cashiers, that process accounts payable, that process the city's payroll. There's not too much to say about this. It's the basic services.
Okay, any questions?
We've tried to
Alderman
cut where
Moriarty?
we can.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. The salary is decreased for, in the finance from '09 estimate to the projected. Are we reducing staff? It was 381 versus 379?
No, we're okay. Tom reminds me that we have put in a 2% vacancy factor. So the estimate is the actual that we think we're going to end the year with. The projected is we come up with the number and then we reduce it by 2%. So that's why there's a difference, because our staffing remains flat in that department.
Thank you.
But the number the number you're working off is not off the estimate. It's off the previous budget year, the 2008-2009 budget year, correct? Or no, am I not correct?
Yeah, no, we're looking at the actual estimate. We're working off of the actual estimate.
Okay. All right. Okay, very good. Thank you. Human Resources.
113, 115, again, a support service to the other departments. We have reduced areas of employee relations and conference seminars training.
It's the actual Human Resource Department, period, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions here? Okay.
IT, here there was a real reduction. We were very pleased with the council's support in allowing the IT group to be expanded to better assist in the utilization and the implementation of technology, which I believe does have a payback in productivity of all employees. But in light of the serious requirement, this 10% reduction, that IT expansion has been postponed for this year and next year. Actually, next year we're suggesting that we go back to full support, but need a lot of council support before that would happen. So, but this year, that position is this current year and the next fiscal year left vacant.
Okay. Yes, sir, Ms. Brand.
Yes, on page 116, line item 5023, software maintenance. And I do understand that there's a detailed explanation on the following page, but my question is, the detailed explanation actually states about the software maintenance that it's an increase due to the new website. I actually thought that the new website would actually reduce our costs, maybe not in this area particularly, but maybe in other areas. So could I get a further explanation on that? Are we seeing the benefits of having some of this stuff be electronic compared to people coming in the city hall, or?
Battery's dead. The increase, we do have an annual maintenance contract with the website provider. Their website applications are actually that application. So some of the notify us, the news alerts, quite a few of them are applications and stuff. They are saving us money, saving us internal stuff. Hopefully more people are finding information, not making as many calls to city staff, but that's what the increase is for.
Okay. It's like anything else, too. I understand that this is growing. We haven't had a lot of money in the budget for advertising the new functionality of the new website. So it's just kind of growing organically and a little slower than we might have hoped. But people will, as you can see from online business in the greater world, this is something that is growing all the time. So my guess is 10 years from now, this will be the normal way of doing business with the city. Mr. Spinack.
Thank you, Mayor. Under full-time wages, the out year, there's about a $93,000 increase, and that's an additional headcount.
Talking about this first one up here?
Yeah, that's on page 116, the very first top
Yes.
line.
Yes, that's,
Yes, that's that additional person that council approved last year. We did not fill that position. We're leaving it empty one more year. We're hoping that second year out, that we'll be able to fill that position on the full-time. The same with the part-time line. We had budgeted 2 interns, and you see we do not have those 2 interns in there. Second year out, those 2 interns are at least in the budget. Does that answer the question?
in Mr. Borchardt's introduction, he said that he thanked us for allowing us to add this headcount, but that they were taking a pass on it this year, given the situation, and they anticipate taking a pass on it next year as well, but it's still in the budget for now.
Right.
But from a council strategic perspective, as you look at the first year operating budget and then the second year operating budget, the first year budget has been constrained by this slightly over 10% reduction in otherwise, from a staff perspective, what would be recommended expenditures. The second year is there in an unconstrained relative to that 10% number, but is limited to what was anticipated would be a proper expenditure to provide the traditional level of services and services that have been talked about in the past, as an example of this IT additional staff person. So the council would have that understanding of what staff believes at least would be a proper level of financial support to the budget to provide the services that you've asked for in the past for the community. If you can afford to find a way to make that happen, that would be your target number to be looking for. But certainly we understand that next year the city staff will be working with the city council on another budget.
Okay, if I may follow up, under contractual services, the last line item, other services, is up about 23,000, and then it stays up for the next year also. It's at 46.8. Other services.
The city's probably one of the remaining communities that are still operating with the franchise-provided INET, institutional network. And what this line item provides for is us moving off of that INET onto a city-wide area network.
And under capital outlay on the next page, on 117, it's going from a budget of 20 in 2009-10 from 50,000 to 550,000 next year. And associated with that is miscellaneous equipment is jumping up about double. And that's under a capital outlay.
What happened with the capital outlay for the IT area is that we looked at scheduled for next year in 09-10. We did have PC replacement. We're really on a 3-year schedule. We feel at this time we can push that out a year. So in that second year out, we have PC replacement. We have the police MDTs that need to be replaced. They're on their 4th year already. We have our I-5, which is our IBM equipment that operates the general ledger and payroll and all of those applications. So quite a few of the things were pushed out a year and a deferral. In the miscellaneous equipment, the second year out, we did push out $50,000 to replace some of the audio-video equipment here in the city council chambers. So all of that is really a result of deferring.
Okay, thank you.
To follow up on that point, in regards to when we get new hardware within the city of Elmhurst, I know from where I work that we're on actually a 4, 5, and even some people are on a 6-year rotation in regards to the capital outlay for PCs or laptops. I guess, could you give me some perspective on why we would be doing something in the city of Elmhurst on a 3-year rotation compared to something further out on a regular basis 4 or 5 years out?
We really look at it every year. Again, this is just, we feel we can at least push it out 4 years. Our 3 years was standard. Sometimes it's a matter of, and Mike Stenson's here if you have more follow-up questions, but some of it's software-driven. So some of the operating systems and stuff, will that force us into needing to upgrade the hardware just because of the operating systems? We were concerned about Vista, and would Vista work with some of our applications and things like that. So my understanding is they've held off on Vista, that we can still buy PCs with the older operating system. So that drives some of it. And then the maintenance costs, we look at the maintenance costs and stuff of what is it costing us with our staff and ability to change out different pieces of equipment if a monitor goes out or whatever. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, very good. Fortune?
Planning and zoning, and Mr. Said will be ready to assist. The previous vacant position is continued on vacant. Reduced the professional services for the remaining work on the comprehensive plan, which fortunately is just about finished, so some of that work can be reduced going forward. We'll also talk about visitor and tourism, which is under Mr. Said's oversight. Visitor and tourism, a reduction in participation with the DuPage Conference and Convention Bureau. We'll do that in-house, and also reducing the contract for economic outreach on a consultant basis for the city center and city at large has been reduced.
Questions? Yes, Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. The one budget line that you called out as in excess of last year's is the duplicating. Can you tell me what happened, why you estimated it was so low and it jumped by so much? It's 3021.
I'm sorry, can you give me a line item, please?
3021.
3021.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We have help on the far right.
honestly, I'm not sure what happened with the budget line item. It is very under as far as what the estimated is and stuff. I really think that the original allocation to that area was incorrect in the budget.
I have a follow-up. The same thing apparently happened with the Human Resources Department 2 years ago. There was a big jump in duplicating and.
Yeah, a lot of times it depends on where we buy the copiers and place them, and then their usage and stuff. So.
So the equipment comes in this line as well?
The equipment, right. But not the purchase, the capital outlay of it, just the monthly charges for the use of it. But we do have a color copier up in that area that does get used quite a bit by the HR and the planning and zonings.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Nybel.
Public notices, line 30-54.
This is a reaction to actual applications coming forward, and those applications typically do require the applicant to make a payment for the permit, which covers those expenses. So there is a offsetting revenue that would be in another area of the budget.
Thank you.
You know, that sounds like it was a great question, but I wasn't able to follow it because what page was that on?
Page 119,
119?
and it was line 30-54.
Okay. Okay.
And again, this is an estimate of an expenditure. There will be an offsetting revenue. If there aren't cases, the money won't be spent, the money won't be collected. there are cases, it'll be dollars spent, but then there'll also be an
Okay.
offsetting revenue.
So it's just like public notice, is this like when someone asks for a variance and then you gotta notify the people in the area and that kind of thing?
There's a required posting in the newspaper.
Okay, but you charge the applicant for that?
Correct.
Okay, I got it. Any other, yes,
Quick question.
Moriarty.
Thank you, Mayor. With our current economic situation and the lack of development going on in our town, do you foresee the salaries going down because there's not going to be as much development going forward, at least for the next couple of years?
There has already been a reduction in hire back that provides a bit of the rubber band, if you will, expansion for not area in Mr. Sed's department, but more in the code inspection, the field work, the building department, and in the zoning code enforcement. There's less activity there, and there's therefore less, somewhat less staff there. Yes.
When you mean less staff, are we reducing staff?
There's less hire back of many of the code enforcement officers are hire back part-time employees. That has been lessened.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, Mr. Sed, while I have you at the table here, let's talk about the visitor and tourism part, the 17273.
This also is the area where the community grants are listed.
I'm sorry?
Community grants, not really something in Mr. Sed's direct oversight, but it's where the community grant programs are listed. The Finance Committee has provided some oversight and direction, and the details are provided on page 173 of what is recommended.
Right.
It's a cutback in grants, but still some significant assistance to the entities that provide a.
All right. What I wanted to point out was this, that you see, if you look at 6032 on 172, Community Grant Program, you see a number there in previous years that looked like 201, 206, 207, and then 131. So that is a cutback of the Community Grant Program. But then we get to a 208 in the second year out. Now, my point is that, like Mr. Sapaniak pointed out a couple of minutes ago, you're going to see that several times. Now, this is a judgment call on the part of staff as to how to prepare the budget. This does two things kind of simultaneously. It tells you where the staff would like us to be. It tells you what the community expectations are, what the community is used to, and by looking back from, in this case, the 208 to the 131, it tells you what measures have been taken to attempt to control our spending in this down economic time. The 208 is in no way a commitment to spend 208 in the 2010-2011 year. It's kind of what would have happened had we not hit this economic mess that the country's in right now. So, so there you have it. You're going to see that over and over again, and I just wanted to kind of use this as an example of how the thought process of putting here. Another city manager, another finance manager might have decided to leave this 131,500 into the next year out and just add 2 or 3% to it or some such thing. But I think it's a healthier way of doing it, a better, more holistic way of doing it, so that we can see, you know, we can see where we are, but we can also now see where we are not, and where we would like to be. And it's unfortunate. And Mr. Sapaniak and his committee did a lot of hard work to cut this number down, by way of example. And when you see these numbers, a lot of work is behind these in an attempt to trim our sails and get through this mess that we're in. Now, having said that, where would I find that line item that shows that we're dropping out of the DuPage Convention Bureau? Mr. Sett, am I close to it here?
Yes, that's in line, membership 60-37 on page 172.
Okay, all right. The big fat zero there, I see. Okay. Maybe that's why I couldn't find it. All right, so again, there's an example of an old number and a new number, and we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Now, I also understand we're dropping the contractual services of our recruiter for businesses in town. Kathy, is that correct?
Yes, that's under PZED. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And what line item is that, real quick? Do you happen to have it?
That is back on page 119,
Yes.
and I believe that's 30-12.
Okay, so that goes down from 60 to 33 there, and she was a part-time consultant for us.
Correct.
She helped us. I've seen in various formats over the last couple of weeks some issues, some folks are starting to notice that our vacancy rate in downtown Elmhurst is growing, and I will argue that this is probably the worst time to let this person go, not the best time. I think Kathy Maloney's done a fantastic job for us and has brought us some very notable retailers. Having said that, this isn't really an option at this point. We have to let her go, or at least that's the feeling of the staff. So, and as much as I don't like to let her go, these folks are pouring over the numbers all day, every day, and we just can't afford it right now. So, anyways, okay, that's the end of my. Well, Mr. Sett is going to try to pick up the slack the best he can and utilize all the resources that he has in his department. Martha is there every day, but that's not exactly what she was hired for. But, you know, and the mayor, I quite frankly have done less of this kind of work recently than I did in the past. The new mayor, whoever that happens to be, can, you know, walk to prospective businesses around downtown Elmhurst like I used to do more often. It took time away from my job, but you know, hey, we're all pulling this together. So if some alderman, if they ever call you up and say, hey, are you home on Tuesday afternoon? Could you show somebody around downtown? I hope you're there to say yes. If you can, do it. And maybe Mr. Gow is going to be retired by then. Maybe he can do it. And he's a charming fellow, and we'll be able to lend, I'm sure, be glad to lend a hand. So it's kind of, I mean, that's where we're at here, folks. I mean, this is painful stuff. There's stuff out of this budget that really, you know, in the past should be in this budget. I hate to let it go. But we got to do it, and one of the ways to make it up is, as you just suggested, we got to all kind of cover each other here a little bit more than we used to. So, well, Moriarty.
You know, maybe as a suggestion is maybe keep her on as a, well, do it more as a commission-based type of a position. New ideas or new storefronts that come in or new type of businesses come in, buy her work, then she could be compensated accordingly as the production of what she does bring into the city. I mean, after all, we are trying to keep our retail sales tax strong, and you really hate to see a professional in that field not be here when the retail businesses need it the most, and especially if Mr. Sett is busy with other things. I don't know if his focus will be the number one of keeping our retail as vibrant as it should be.
Well, I'm going to respond to that by saying that's a good idea. And I would ask Mr. Borchert to consider it going forward. I don't think we can put that in the budget as such tonight. I don't know what mechanism we could do that with. But the point is, maybe in the near future, you can think about and talk to the consultant that we've had and see if she'd be willing to work on some sort of I don't know what the metric would be, if it would be a commission or filling square feet or some such thing. But that, in other words, that's why we can't decide it tonight. We'll leave it up to the staff to work it out, okay?
I would report that the Economic Development Commission and the collaboration with the Economic Development Alliance, this chamber, the city center, and the city, out of that group really came the notion of utilizing the back of the city sticker in this current upcoming fiscal year to promote sales tax as the #1 source of revenue for the city, encourage the community to shop locally, and I think you should have been provided a handout that's being distributed at counters in the central business district, and when anybody buys their vehicle sticker, that again further promotes the Elmhurst retailing as a place to go for purchasing and sales, to again try to do the best we can as a community and pull all of our resources together.
Okay.
Have some questions, Fire Department.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Sett. We appreciate your great efforts.
Chief. Cop on fire, civil defense, and another one of, frankly, our Elmhurst advantages, and I don't want folks to miss the opportunity that Elmhurst has with a fire chief that can also serve as a department head and head up a building department. That's been a cost savings in the Elmhurst community for years, and sometimes we take that for granted. Not all communities can pull it off. Not all communities have staff that can handle that shared area of responsibility in a proper way. Chief Cop handles that, and there's a built-in savings in that regard with these two departments being served by just one department head as opposed to two. There's some reduction in staffing, reduction in some training. The chief has got some highlights of what's not going to be provided and what is, we're pleased, going to continue to be provided.
Thank you. The Elmhurst Fire Department will remain dedicated to the preservation of life and property in Elmhurst, continue to focus on disaster preparedness and training. The City of Elmhurst has a disaster preparedness committee, and really the responsibilities of the committee are to make sure we meet the federal mandates and training, which affects some of our grant money and funding. They also make sure Elmhurst is prepared for any man-made or natural disasters. In the area of training, we continue to use our state-of-the-art training facility. A little bit less this year due to a vacancy in one of our training officer positions, which we chose to leave vacant at this time, and also a 25% reduction in the hours of our other part-time training officers. As far as public education, we've also reduced our public education officers' hours by 25%. But we're staying focused on what we feel is our core public education programs, which is the first grade Cool Rules for Fire Safety, the fourth grade Learn Not to Burn program, and our preschool programs. What we're not going to be offering this year is our CPR classes, the fire safety trailer classes, and we're going to trailer around to different schools, and our fire extinguisher programs due to the reduction in the hours for our public education officers. We've also reduced the hours of our fire inspectors, our part-time fire inspectors, by 25% also. We still feel that with the help of the on-duty shift personnel that we can meet our goal of 100% inspections of all the businesses in Elmhurst. We also see Fire Station 2 is moving right along down there. We're pretty much right on time. We had a terrible winter so far, but I think our construction manager did a great job keeping us on track. At this point, we're still under budget, but hopefully we'll remain that way. Lastly, we're still working towards getting our antique fire truck completed. We're hoping this year we'll be able to complete it. For anybody that still wants to make donations, we're still accepting them to get that thing completed. As with anything, we start working on old equipment, it ends up costing a little bit more and taking a lot more time than you thought it would. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions of the fire chief. Alderman Moriarty.
Yeah, the one question I have here, and probably one of the larger item number or expenses, the overtime for full-time employees. Is there any way that we can reduce that number and not have the firemen be working overtime? Because the item number right now is, projected to be $306,000. It seems excessive. Unless there's some other program that we can do to keep them on a 40-hour work week.
Well, actually, a 40-hour work week actually costs more because it requires 4 shifts of personnel to maintain a 40-hour work week. That's one of the advantages of a three-shift platoon. It's actually more cost-effective. A lot of overtime, we're working on it constantly, trying to corral it in as best we can. Most of that is just to maintain the staffing that we have right now on the fire trucks. Like I said, we're looking at it all the time, and we've actually reduced some already. Some of the training courses that we've gone to in the past, we're not going to now, and we're just looking at it on a constant basis. But most of it's hire back to fill positions on the fire apparatus.
It wouldn't make sense to have somebody on the outside come in as a consultant or something along that line instead of having your own employees do that? Unless I'm not understanding what you're saying.
It's to maintain the staffing on the fire apparatus on a daily basis.
Okay.
Well, basically what it works out to be is there's basically 14 people assigned per shift.
Okay.
And with those 14 people, what we try to staff is a 3-person engine, 2-person truck, and a 2-person ambulance at each side of town. I'm sorry, there's also 4 contract medics in there. So it's 18 people assigned per day, counting the 4 contract paramedics. Due to vacations, Kelly days, training, sick time, whatnot, injuries, we work with 15 at a minimum each day. And 15 at a minimum staffs, 3 on an engine, 2 on a truck, 2 on an ambulance at both stations, and a battalion chief. And so if more, there's actual times because of the amount of people on shift and the amount of vacation time accrued that there's 3 people off just on vacation days alone. So if someone would call in sick or have an on-duty injury, then we hire back to fill that position to maintain that 15.
So, and it doesn't, it's not cost-effective to add another shift into the program?
Well, no, I would say not, because it's not, we're not hiring a person back every single day. You figure hire back's about time and a half, but you also figure a person's salary plus benefits is about time and a half also. And so if you hired someone full-time, you would be paying that benefit and salary 365 days a year, where we're just doing it when we need to fill in that position.
I understand there's 3 shifts, so to have an additional laborer on each of the 3 shifts, that takes really more than 3 people, takes 4. And then, and you've got then more workers' comp, more pension, more overtime for the 4. So it's a constant evaluation that the chief, with help from the finance department, go through to identify the proper staffing level versus when to use overtime and pull back employees.
Alderman Graham?
On a different topic.
Oh, okay. I will only say this about this, and I won't point a finger at anybody, only myself. I once sat down with the fire chief, I think 2 fire chiefs ago, Mr. Fennell, Chief Fennell. I tried to have him explain to me fire department scheduling, and I couldn't get it. It's beyond even that there's 3 shifts. You know, I work in a company that works 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, 5 days a week, 2 days off. They don't do that. They've got to have this thing staffed up. And by this thing, I mean the Elmhurst Fire Department. You never know when the phone's going to ring. People have to be there all the time, 24 hours a day, 365. Somebody's in those fire stations at dinner time on Christmas Day. And then they get these Kelly days, which are their extra days off, and they've got the gold cycle, the red cycle, and the black cycle. I have it right? So it's very complicated. And the fact that they end up with this kind of overtime, which looks like a very large number, is absolutely typical of fire department operations, and there's just no way around it. So that's all. I'm just kind of speaking more to the public than anyone on the dais here, but just so you know, it's. But when you never know when you're going to dial 911, and you want a trained individual in that station ready to go with the right equipment and the right training, and this is what it takes. It's just about it.
Thank you, Mayor. Just maybe a naive question, but once the hospital is built, that increases the density of people there and the infrastructure. Is there some sort of formula that you work by? I mean, we'll have a new fire station at York Commons by then, but, you know, and I know the object was for the future, so there's adequate coverage for the whole area?
The new fire station?
Yes.
The new fire station is built to staff and other ambulances, which I think we're going to have to do at some point. And the number that has been used by the municipalities is when you start running a total of 6,000 calls between 2 stations, which we this year did 6,600 calls, that's when they put in the 3rd ambulance in the service. And so we're at that now. We're still evaluating exactly when we do that and how we're going to do it, but we're covering it as right now. The situation just becomes the number of ambulance calls continues to increase year by year. And the thing of it is when the ambulance is out of service, you know, on a call, and then we send out an engine or a truck to cover the next ambulance call on that side of town. Or we bring mutual aid in, which we're doing more than we have in the past.
Okay, thank you. Can I follow up with just a question on the account here? Other expenses on page 123, And I read that little blurb about spending the foreign fire insurance. Can you explain that?
Now, the foreign fire insurance is, if you purchase your fire insurance as a commercial industrial business, if you purchase your fire insurance from an insurance company based outside of Illinois, 2% of your fire premium gets donated back to the Foreign Fire Insurance Board, which is made up of 4 members of the Elmhurst Fire Department elected by the members of the Elmhurst Fire Department. The city of Elmhurst, on average, gets approximately $50,000 a year towards the 2% fire tax fund. And the board right now, they've saved, they haven't spent their money like they have in the past because they were trying to keynote it to certain programs, which we don't think they're going to actually work, the programs they wanted. The way the legislation is written, it's state legislation, is that it's for the use, betterment, or maintenance of the fire department. Those are the guidelines. It's that vague.
Okay, thank you.
Some fire, to add again for the general public, and I don't think there's been very much, I'll take it back, there has been no abuse of this in Elmhurst, but what the chief just said very politely was that we have nothing to do with this. It shows up as a budget item because it flows through the city, but the city is not the source of, the Elmhurst taxpayer is not the source of revenue for these funds. These funds are collected through the state of Illinois and allocated to Elmhurst based on people who buy insurance from companies out of state. And a lot of times these are used by fire departments, by the men and women of the fire department to buy things for them that the city can't and would not and probably should not be buying out of tax dollars. That oftentimes makes their job easier, sometimes makes their job safer, and sometimes just makes their job a little more pleasant. By way of example, it's not unheard of that a fire department somewhere in the state of Illinois will use their foreign fire department funds to buy a TV for the station house because the TV that they have is 18 years old and black and white or whatever. Or maybe a better, something like that, something that would make life a little bit more palatable for the people who serve in those unusual conditions in firehouses. So that's what it is. But we get this question a lot. What is the Foreign Fire Fund thing all about? Why is it called foreign? Where does the money come from? Where does it go? I think that's a pretty thorough explanation. So, Mr. Nybo had a question.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the pension fund. When the pension fund does poorly because of economic situations, the city's contribution ends up being larger than it typically is when the economic situation is better off and the funds are earning monies. And I'm just wondering, I mean, is there any way to insure against that? I mean, can you insure your pension fund so, maybe when the market is great, the city's contribution is not as low as it usually is, but in a situation like now where the fund doesn't perform well, we don't take such a hit like we do?
I have no idea. To be honest with you, I've never heard of that.
We probably would have bought that insurance from AIG.
I'm not sure. I've been on the pension
It just
board.
seems like the worst time in the world to be hit with additional pension costs because of the economic situation is at the same time that our other revenue streams are really suffering.
Yeah, I am not sure. I know all our investments are all regulated by the state of Illinois, state legislation. I mean, I've been on the pension board for about 20 years now. I've never heard of that, actually. I've heard of insuring the trustees, but even that insurance, they're saying most funds don't have it because it's not even valid insurance they have.
Thank you.
My comment about AIG was not entirely a joke. I mean, AIG was insuring a lot of instruments that have all gone bad all at the same time.
I would just think for planning purposes, it would be easier for us to weather the additional pension costs if it was more consistent of a line as opposed to the up and the down as the market goes.
I would think consistently over the last 30, 40 years, the fund has been positive. So I would think the cost to have the insurance would probably not be beneficial for the one or two times that we have this is the first time we ever got hit like this. And,
Yeah, I heard that.
since the fund's been in effect since the 60s.
Yeah, it's Brett.
Thank you. We spoke earlier, City Manager Borchert spoke earlier about 50% being salaries. On page 122, more for, I guess, my education as well as the general public, line item 2011 and 2012, these two line items obviously are for police and fire. Can you expand on that from an educational perspective, since 2011 is over $1 million on what that actually is?
That line item 2011 is the actuarially determined number that the city must pay into the pension fund. So, and that number shows up on the city's levy. So we don't, on one hand, I would say to be responsible, we don't have, the city council doesn't have a choice in that. It is determined by an actuary very specifically to our own firefighters, their age, their life expectancy, et cetera, based on what's going on with the pension fund, and also a big impact are the benefits that are approved by state legislation that will impact that number and what we will have to contribute. So we don't have, it's one of those mandates we don't have much control over.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Alderman Gukoff?
Thank you. I'd like to take a look at the ESDA and civil defense part of the fire budget on page 127.
Line number, please.
Line item 8006. It's for vehicles, and there was an unplanned for 11,000 and change expense in this current budget year. It wasn't in the budget, but we expended it, and I was just wondering what that was for.
You know, that was, we have that mobile command vehicle we bought last year, and what we did is that there's a TV camera on there that goes up, and it's the mast that puts the camera up. But that wasn't budgeted. Those funds are part of the Primeco settlement funds, where it was I could probably explain it better. It was that the tax that was on cellular phones, that there was a lawsuit and it was settled, and the way it was settled was the funds that the city of Elmhurst actually collected for that had to be spent on an unbudgeted type of preparedness type. We're redoing our EOC in the Station 1 with that. We repaired the mobile command vehicle mast with that, you know, things of that nature.
So the funds came from elsewhere.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Alderman Moriarty?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I know that a couple of the police officers, the fire officers have like city cars. Where is that in the item on the budget that allocates that for you guys? Is that in here underneath the general fund?
Yeah, 9503, Central Garage Services. Yeah, for the maintenance of all the vehicles.
I'm sorry, what page is that on?
Let's see, 124. There's a 9503 on page 124, Central Garage Services. That's for all the fire department vehicles.
What happens with Central Garage Services, and all of the maintenance operation at the Public Works garage is calculated, and then based on the records of what that department is repairing, police, fire, public works, administrative, there will be costs allocated back to the various departments for those services. So it's Alderman Moriarty's question would be that the fire trucks as well as the fire administrative vehicles are part of what the fire department expends out of the public works equipment maintenance expenditure. They then get charged back a fair share.
Okay. Gukoff?
Thank you. I'd like to go back to page 126, line 3012. It's consultant-
126, 3012?
Consultant fees. Can you just tell me what those are for?
That's for our weather service.
Thank you.
Sorry, what?
Weather service.
Weather service.
For,
Okay.
emergency
You buy a
operating
weather
center.
service. Right. Okay. That, just to fill in the blank there, so you know, they, at the police department up front and the fire stations, and down in the emergency command center, there's all kinds of fancy inputs of weather and local and national and radars and everything else, so they don't, by way of example, when we were down there in the windstorm, now a year and a half ago, we could see the front moving in and where it had been, and we knew when it was going to be over, et cetera, so. And by the way, many mornings when I come into the office, we'll get reports from Public Works. I think they have a repeater out at the Public Works Department and the Water Department, where they'll update us on weather events during the night that might have caused folks some disruption or uneasiness or et cetera. So, all right, okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. We appreciate.
Do a little building department.
I'm sorry.
Building department. Were there questions?
Oh, building department. Yes, we've been mostly in.
Some comments.
128, 129 is the building department, code enforcement kind of things. Is that where we're at?
That's correct.
Okay. We all know.
Just some general comments on that is, you know, as we see that the number of redevelopments on single-family homes has dropped, a pretty steep decrease of about 50% from the prior year. Additions have dropped slightly also, maybe about 20 or 25%. And as the city manager talked about earlier, sort of like the rubber band, we had a part-time code enforcement position that we did not fill. The building inspector, part-time building inspector, we just don't use his services anymore. And then we also had a part-time plan reviewer that we vacated that position also.
Okay, so on labor there, you're saving roughly $55,000 a year. Okay. All right. Any questions about that? Building. How many building permits did we have in the last month?
The last month for new homes, 2.
I didn't say new homes, but you answered new homes, 2?
2. We had, you know, when you talk about just building permits, you want to talk about additions and new homes. There was 10 so far this year, or 12. I'm sorry, 12. But if you look at a permit, last year, for instance, the year prior, we issued 1,800 permits. It's 2007. We issued 1,800 permits for everything. That's garages, fences. A new home actually counts for like 4 permits because you get a water meter and you get a home permit and so on. And in 2007, we issued about 1,800 permits. 2007, 1,400 permits, with a reduction in permit fees of about $400,000 from 1.8 to about 1.4 million. So the commercial has kept steady, and then some commercial industrial. Residential has dropped off.
I saw in reports we had a couple of months we actually had 0 home permits over the last 6 months, 5 months. So that's pretty unusual. Well, it's the new reality. So, all right, Mr. Gow.
Just a question for clarification is 128, line 3052, professional services. Across the line there's such a huge swing. 08-09 budget 450,000, then estimated is 100,000, and then projected 10,000. I just there's such a sweep there that I wonder what the professional services have been, or why how I might explain that.
You know, the big sweep on there was the Elmhurst Hospital. What we had budgeted for was to pay a contractual service to do all the inspections at Elmhurst Hospital. As we reviewed it, we looked closely at it, and the $100,000 is because of the plan review for Elmhurst Hospital. That was done by an outside company. And so we paid that $100,000 for the plan review. But the rest of the money, we looked at it, myself, building commissioner, building inspector, and one of our newer hires, our plan reviewer. We were able to, with those personnel, do the inspections at Elmhurst Hospital up till this point without having to call an outside consultant due to the technical ability of the people we have in the building department. Now, what we did, we think we're going to continue because of the way the project's going, that we'll be able to continue to do the inspections. We did leave some money in there in case there's any need for any specialty inspections. We start getting the compressed gases and things of that nature, we may have to call an outside expert to help do those inspections. But by the same token, the hospitals have those inspections done also. And some of the inspections, we take their outside inspectors' inspections, review them, and if they're acceptable, we'll accept those also. So that's really the thing is that we looked at it as a building department and said, we can do this. We don't have to pay an outside source. And so we reduced the budget by that amount. And it was supposed to be the same thing for next year, actually, but we're also going to do it in-house.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that leads Mr. Borchard to an obvious question, which was, in my mind, we had an agreement with the hospital relative as to what they would be paying for building permits. And to some degree, it had a function of what we were going to be enduring as outside charges. Now we're keeping them inside. So are we still somehow ginning up a number to charge them?
That the agreement was done.
And by ginning, I don't mean creating out of thin air. I mean doing the paperwork to justify it. Or
No, when the agreement was settled, it was settled on an amount. Here's what they're going to pay. It's already been settled.
They're paying us what they were going to pay.
They're paying what they're going to pay us. There's not
Okay.
an upcharge or a downcharge somewhere on the
Okay.
road. They pay us.
So then the monies just aren't flowing out of the building. We're using them in-house.
Correct.
Okay. Partially because of the free up of time because of the lack of other activity.
That's part of it.
Okay. Well, that's good then. All right. Alderman Moriarty.
Yeah, consulting fees, line, it's on page 128, 3012. 35,000, 41,000.
Yes. There's basically two things come out of that. The majority of it's our plumbing inspector. We have a part-time plumbing inspector. He's actually an independent contractor. We pay him so much per inspection, and he's probably around $35,000 of that. And the other bit is for elevator plan review and elevator inspections. We have an outside agency do the elevator plan review because we don't have the technical ability to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Snivel.
Well, I mean, I guess, I know the flip side of if there's no redevelopment going on because of the economic situation, then there's a lot more vacant homes. Has your department anticipated more work related to vacant homes and properties associated with them? And then, wasn't there a recent change in state law that allows the city to place a lien on properties that are public nuisance or deemed public nuisance in some sense?
Yes and yes.
And what exactly, what are the
what we do
parameters?
actually,
what kind of a lien can we place? I mean, if there's...
Well, we place liens on properties anytime we have to do any type of maintenance on them because we can't get the homeowner or the bank or whoever is in charge of that property. It doesn't happen that often. We've worked very well with the realtors and the banks. There's a couple out there that have been problems, and so at those points, we'll hire someone to do the work. For instance, in the summer, we'll hire someone to mow the lawns. We'll lien the properties, and we've been very successful at getting that money back.
I mean, let me ask a very personal question, not too personal. The house next to me, the fence is it's fallen down. It's a vacant home. No, I haven't called yet, but I mean, I would call your department.
That's correct.
And that's something that the city can take care of, and then we place a lien on that property.
If we cannot get that property owner or whoever's responsible for the property to take care of it, we will do that. We have done that.
Okay, thanks.
If it's a person that lives, is it a vacant home?
Yes.
We will do that. If the person lives in there, we'll take them to court until they, if we have to get reconciled.
Alderman Moriarty.
Have you seen, well, no doubt you've seen an increase in the vacancy homes in Elmhurst. Do you have a number about how many homes are vacant currently in Elmhurst?
The number vacant, I really don't know what the number vacant is. As far as homes in foreclosure, it's around 80 right now in Elmhurst.
I'm sorry, it's what?
80.
Around
80.
80, yeah.
Which is a very low number, actually.
What do you think the number would have been if we asked you that same question 5 years ago? In other words, what's the change from normal?
I don't know the answer.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Hipkin.
Just curiosity now, where's the 80 in foreclosure? Where's that number based out of? Does the county tell us when someone files?
Correct. We get information from the county. Plus, we read the newspapers. That's where we get a lot of the information. is through the newspaper to list the notifications in the legal section of the newspaper, and we get lists from the county.
Yeah, but I want to hasten to add that a foreclosed house doesn't mean an empty house.
That's correct.
I know of some houses that have been foreclosed.
That's correct. That's why I don't know the
Three
number.
times in the last 20
vacant.
years, and the same family lives there all the time.
Correct.
So,
And in the ones that have been vacant, we've really been successful in keeping those up to par. We'll see what happens now that the weather's breaking and grass and that type of thing makes it a little more difficult. In the winter, it's a little easier, but.
yeah, if this goes on 5 or 6 years, it's going to get to be a real problem, though. I'm not saying it is going to go on 5 or 6 years, but there's no turnaround in the economy. Then a house could be vacant for a year. Doesn't, as long as somebody's cutting the lawn, it doesn't have much
Right.
show. But after 5 or 6 years, then things start to happen. So,
It keeps
just
our
a personal comment of mine.
It keeps our code enforcement officers
Yeah,
pretty busy, just running these down and tracking them down.
it's okay. They're not going to new houses, so they got
Right.
things. They got time on their hands. Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, we talk about like a retail consultant, now would be a great time to have a retail consultant. On the other hand, now would be also a very good time to have someone who could work with maybe some of the banks that own a lot of these foreclosed properties to see if there's a way to really get these properties back on the market, because I'm not sure a lot of these vacant homes could even be purchased now because of the legal situations that they're facing. I'm not sure if that's something that we as a city could look into, is to have someone, work with the banks to try to get these properties back on the market and in a position where they could.
There's quite a few of them that our realtors are working with him as it sits now. I mean, that's one of our most successful way of getting things done at the home is to call the realtor and say, hey, you're trying to sell this property. How can you have that fence look like that if you're going to sell this property? And more times than not, they've been able to take care of it through themselves or through the bank or whoever's holding that mortgage.
All right. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, Chief Cop. We appreciate everything you do. It's clear that things change, don't they? I mean, it's obvious that different aspects of your job are taking up some things more time, some things less time. And we appreciate your willingness to be flexible and provide our community with these great level of services to meet the needs of today, which are significantly different than the needs of, say, 4 years ago. So your department does a great job. I hear nothing but good things from the public about things like response time and the care that your people show, and I would ask you to share that with your people at the next opportunity. Thank you. Okay.
Next would be police, pages 130 through 134, and Chief Steve Neubauer has got similar fashion, some highlights and lowlights.
Thank you. If you've noticed in the information of what's occurred this year, we handled about 54,000 calls, and I don't know that crime is going to go up, but certainly calls for service are going up with the economy. Just scanning the incidents over the weekend, seeing a real increase in alcohol-related DUIs, family issues, and those kinds of things that may not necessarily become a crime, but certainly takes our services and the things that keep us busy as we go through the days. In the budget we're presenting, we made some significant cuts in overtime. Compared to some of the other departments, our department is much more heavily invested in personnel than in things. The vast majority of our budget is personnel. We have cut back on some of our overtime traffic enforcement issues. We're having the sergeants and commanders watch overtime where officers are following up on calls at the change of shift, which does diminish some of the service that I would like to deliver, but if an officer has a call and discusses it with his boss, we may put it off to another officer or another day to finish up on that. We have 2 annual sessions of department training. Our officers need to be certified in CPR, driving, legal updates, and we divide that up, trying to get all 70 employees through that twice a year. We cut one of those out. We're only going to do it once a year this year to save substantial personnel cost. With our car purchases this year, we are going to purchase an undercover car with asset forfeitures, and we're attempting to get a grant to purchase one of our marked units, which really reduced our car cost for this year. We have cut way back in public education. We're going to continue the DARE program, Alive at 25, and peer jury. However, we're cutting the Citizens Police Academy program, which was actually a recruiting ground for volunteers that we use at various functions throughout the year. They help with the cool cars, and when we had Elmfest and some of these other events that we need volunteers for. And we did cut our background investigator. We had a part-time retired officer of state police who did background investigations for liquor licenses, police and fire hirings, and that will be done by our detective division when they have available time. That about covers it.
Well, okay, questions of the police chief? Mr. Graham.
And especially in this budget year, this might be an odd question, but on page 130, line item 3027, equipment rental, it seems like it's approximately $25,000 a year. Would it be better to, whatever this rental is, but purchase this compared to an equipment rental every year for $25,000?
Those equipment rentals are for data lines for our various computer systems that go to the state police and go to the county, and it's strictly something, I have no idea what it is except we pay it. It's some sort of fiber optic, who knows what, but we pay it.
Okay, so there's no option there. Okay.
No, you can't see it or pick it up or do anything with it, but it's there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, he only pays what he needs to pay.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Nybo.
Chief, what's our, we're a community, we're adjacent to a lot of state expressways, and which also serves as an impetus for a lot of calls, as I understand, related to incidents on state expressways. Do we have any agreement with either the state police or the state to recoup some of the costs associated with policing the interstates?
No, we don't. We actually go up there and help the state police if they call for assistance for an accident, till the fire department can get there, perhaps help with traffic direction, as we would if Addison called for a bad accident on Route 83, so we really don't track that. If it involves a truck where they spill a load, there's some state law that allows us to recoup some of that money, but basically we go up there as a quid pro quo mutual aid and can call them back. Actually, they're on our mutual aid call list too if we need help.
Yeah, I'm not quibbling with the fact that we do it. I mean, I think we should. It's just, to me, you know, Addison gets the reciprocal benefit of when we need them, they'll come down and help us. But the state, I mean, to me it seems like we're providing them a service of policing their interstates, and that they should somehow shoulder more of the burden or the responsibility for doing that financially in terms of
I understand. I don't know that there's any way we can facilitate that. However, I look at it too that these are Elmhurst residents that use the highways and byways, and it could be my wife or your wife up there with a stalled auto, and if there's not a troop around, if it borders Elmhurst, we would go up there and do what we can to help.
Thanks.
If I can, I don't want to waste everybody's time here, but I want to tell you a little story that I read in one of the governing magazines that we get here up at a community, and I believe it was New England somewhere. I really don't remember off the top of my head, but had done and had attempted to put in, and successfully attempted to put in basically a device to recoup things like, to put it in Elmhurst context, if an Elmhurst police officer has to go to an accident and it's a car from Addison and a car from New Jersey on York Road, then everybody, they bill these people for their services so that the local taxpayers don't have to pay the freight. I didn't like that idea. I think that this is a service that we provide. Public safety is a service that we provide. There's all kinds of costs involved in tracking who these people are and billing them and sending out invoices and reminder notices when they don't pay. Much worse than that, we're in the middle of the Chicago metropolitan area, smack dab in the middle. We get a lot of people in the town, but a lot of people in Elmhurst go all over the place. I would hate to see, heaven forbid it comes to pass that this becomes the rage in municipal revenues in the Chicago metropolitan area in 3 or 5 years, that everybody is billing all the... My wife and I attended a wake in Mokina 2 weeks ago. And on the way back from Mokina on Interstate 80, going to 355, I got a flat. And I had to pull over the side of the road. One thing led to another. I was there for 3.5 hours. And 2 times, state police officers pulled over and asked me how things were going and was I safe and did I have somebody coming. And The answer was, but I didn't get a bill for it. My point is, I didn't get a bill for it. That was a service that the state of Illinois rendered me and my wife. And I just think that we would be, it's attractive to go after. It's something that, you know, particularly when we have, as you've noticed, we absolutely properly, there's hardly a day, I mean, a week goes by that I don't hear on the radio, well, there's an accident on 294 in Elmhurst, somewhere at York Road or St. Charles, and yeah, we're burning time there. But to get in this trying to charge people and then have, well, the mayor of, and I'll just make it up, Evanston decide, well, the heck with them, we're going to start billing too. I think we get into a big mishmash mess there that ends up being less than productive and actually not productive over time, if you carry it to that next level. On the surface, it's a good idea, but, and I don't know how things worked out with that original mayor that I saw, but he was getting a real big pushback from his surrounding communities, so his attitude was that, well, they're not voters in my town, so I don't care, but I don't think that's a good way to run a government. Sir?
And on your point right there, quite frankly, that's how the ambulances services are doing in a lot of municipalities, and charge people exorbitant amounts of money. I know of a call from Elmhurst to Loyola Hospital, which was $9,000, non-emergency, for an ambulance ride. So to your point, it's a terrible thing, and it's a terrible burden that they put on people. And I wouldn't want to do that.
But I just want to leave it that it's a policy thing. I mean, at the end of the day, it's maybe a new policy thing, but I just would hate to see us go in that direction. We'd end up, the police officers would not only be up taking care of the accident, the injured, writing whatever traffic tickets they'd have to do, then they'd have to be getting into writing the bill. So, Alderman Gudenkauf, did you have something? You look like you want to be recognized.
Yes, thank you. Line 6037, memberships, jumps from budgeted in this year of 20,000 to budgeted next year of 78,000. It's on page 131.
6037?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And what was the question?
Oh, sorry, it's the line above it. Grant. I'm sorry, 6031.
Oh,
I just read down the wrong line.
Right. The grants are a revenue stream. The $78,000 includes a big grant we got for railroad safety. Commander Kaviten's been a nationally recognized leader in that, and we have some public education and some grant money from them. We also get grants to reimburse for bulletproof vests and some traffic grants from the Department of Transportation. So that's all income.
But this is showing up here as an expense.
Right, that's the account that we would take any charges out of that account then.
Okay. Okay, so it's a good question because it's not clear. Right. Okay. All right. Yes, Mr. How about Alderman Shea, and then we'll come back.
All right, on page 132, number 95-01. Okay, for the data processing services, we have it going down this year, but then in 2010 it goes up $100,000.
Mr. Borchert?
I don't know.
Oh.
That.
The 2009-2010 dollar amount is going down just because of the vacancies in the IT department. So this is the IT department being allocated to the different departments. So you'll see that line item dropping throughout the budget, and then the second year out was based on the full staffing and everything and the full
so it
costs.
goes up because of the
Full staffing that we're budgeting.
Okay. Mr. Brand?
Yes, not on any particular page. We discussed, I think, a couple years back in regards to our services being provided to the other government bodies, one of which being the school district and the revenues that we retrieve from them. I believe when we discussed it in our committee, we talked about an incremental increase over every year. Has that been happening, or is there any changes in that regard?
We do have an agreement with the school district, and there is a formula, and every year I pull that out and update it and send them an invoice. They don't question it, they pay it. We've not had any issue. But it is something that we do follow that contract, and they get that little bit of increase every year.
Follow up. Have we seen an increase in services from the police to the school district, for example, or has it been a steady stream over the past few years?
We spend a lot of time with the schools. We have 3 school resource officers, we have the DARE officers, and then the patrol officers all spend a lot of time with the public schools and also the parochial schools. It's part of who we police. We don't keep it separate as to what services we provide beyond the payment of the 3 school resource officers, but it's an investment in community safety, and it's where the kids are.
Okay, anyone else? Solomon Gutenkopf?
Yeah, 6075 on page 131, what is the DUI tech fund expenditure, and why has it changed so much over time?
DUI Tech Fund is a fine that is assessed on DUI offenders. Once again, this is another one of those revenue streams, but shows up if we take money out of it. We've been spending the money on in-car cameras. We don't generally know how much we're going to get. It all depends on how many DUI arrests, what the judge is doing, things like that, but we had to put a dollar amount in there, and we've identified things we want to spend the money on. But once again, offenders paying for our equipment, which is a good thing.
So we don't make this expenditure unless we have income
Right.
initially?
Right.
Okay. Moriarty.
Yeah, I'd just like to have a little more explanation on, it's on page 132, item number 9503, essential garage services. It was estimated 503 going up to 541,000.
Right. Once again, this is fuel maintenance on the cars. Comes from Public Works. It's their estimate. Services for the cars, the miles that we put on. We put about 750,000 miles on our cars a year. So we.
And how many cars do you guys have?
We have 25 marked vehicles in the marked fleet, and I think about another 20 administrative vehicles. That's just a guess.
This line item includes fuel? Does this line item include fuel?
I believe it does, yes.
I'm surprised it's not worse than that. All right. Going back.
So we have a total of 45 cars that you guys...
About that, yeah.
Okay.
We have a list of vehicles that's in the capital budget, but that includes things like the smart trailer and those kinds of things, so.
And that's all rolled up into this item?
I'm sorry, what?
That's all rolled up into this item?
Not the purchase of them, just the maintenance of them.
Just the maintenance. And the increase of the 40,000 from one year to the next, that's just, it's not any new vehicles, it's just the increase of maintenance?
Right, we're just replacing vehicles, we're not adding new ones. So that would be, yeah, fuel and maintenance and those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know that I ever heard that number before. The Elmhurst Police Department puts on 750,000 miles a year?
That's correct, yeah, about 750,000 miles a year on our vehicles.
I just shared an impression with you. That sounds low to me, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sounded like a lot to me.
When I was...
It is what it is, you know.
I know a lot of salesmen in the Chicago area are racking up 80 and 85 a year just in one car. But I don't know. I guess it's just in our town. I guess that makes sense. It's fine. I'm not disputing it. I'm just sharing an impression that my impression is that it sounds a little low, but I don't know what I'm basing that on. So I learn something new every day, and certainly every year when we do this, I learn something new, even though we've been through it a few times before. So, okay, very good. Anything else? Any other questions of the chief? Well, very good. Thank you, Chief Neubauer. As I said to Chief Kopp, thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do. I am going to ask you a question, though, because this came up. I understand, as you all know, I missed the meeting last week, which I apologize for. I had to be out of town on business. Actually, it was public business. I was in L.A. with the RTA looking at bus rapid transit systems for possible implementation in DuPage County, but that's where I was. But, okay, anyways, question came up, or I heard there was a statement made that someone believed or thought they had heard that during the storms last week, DUCOM was not answering the phone. DUCOM was busy. They were getting busy signals. Can someone address that? The fire chief has his hand up. I understand that you might have got swamped at the front desk there at the police station because you have, what, one or two people there, two people?
Right.
To answer the phone there, and that happens. But
Yes.
my understanding has always been that 911 is,
The system's designed, if they get an overflow of calls, it should go to another call center. In other words, South Elmhurst calls might go to Oak Brook, as opposed to somebody getting a busy signal. We have contacted DUCOM, and they need a little more specific time and date when it occurred, and they're looking at it. Unless the fire chief has something else.
yes, please, Chief. This is kind of important, because I'm speaking for the residents of Elmhurst. We have an expectation that when we call 911, it's going to get answered. And I have been under the belief that we had systems in place to make sure that save a national disaster when virtually everybody calls 911 simultaneously throughout the county. But in something like a rainstorm, that there were mechanisms in place for backups and like dominoes tripping to other areas, to et cetera. So could that, in your mind, do you think that could have happened? Although it wasn't a statement, the person didn't say they knew this happened, they said they had heard that this had happened.
Yeah, I was able to track down the person who made the call, and I did talk to them.
Yes.
Just as a little background, DUCOM that evening received 992 calls in 1 hour, which is 40 more than our average for a full day. But the situation, you're absolutely right, that when someone calls, if you should not get a busy signal, it should ring and roll over to their dispatch center if our dispatch center cannot handle any more calls, which DUCOM was doing that evening. They were receiving calls from other dispatch centers who could not handle the amount of calls they were getting. They were rolling over to DUCOM. The situation with the person that made that call is, first of all, they made it with a cell phone. When you call 911 on a cell phone, it does not go to DUCOM. It goes to another dispatch center. About 90% of our town is covered by the DuPage County Sheriff. If you're making a call from the east side of town, it may be picked up by the Berkeley Police Department as the dispatching for Berkeley, where I'm not we can't track down where that call went, but it went to one of those two dispatch centers.
You've answered the question. It was a cell phone. People don't know. I'm going to take this opportunity to let them know. I see a member of the press is writing here rapidly. The TV is on. Hopefully, a lot of people in our community will see this. I know that a lot of folks are switching over to all wireless homes, and that's perceived to be a good thing. But the fact of the matter is 911 was originally designed as a landline service. It is much better when you call from a landline than a cell phone. As the chief just said, you call from a cell phone if you're in a peripheral area of our town, if you're a peripheral area of our county, gosh knows where that call is going. I cannot and will not be responsible for that call. I can't. I don't know where it's going. The sheriff department is a different department. The best thing that happens with the sheriff department is that the person on the phone, and they're pretty good, but they're not perfect. They figure out that you're calling from Elmhurst and they switch it to DUCOM. So that, at best, takes 20, 30, 40 seconds to figure out. And when your house is on fire or there's a bad guy at your front door, that's a lot of time wasted. So I would just let everybody know that as long as possible, in my home, we hold on to one landline for this reason only. And because I'm an elected official, I want to be in the book. So that's another reason to keep a landline. But it's just something that people should know. You're much better off on a landline than you are on a cell phone, and that's as a general rule. Now, if you're in your car and you have an accident, that's fine too, but that's a different situation. So thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your taking the initiative to follow up and dig into it. So, Mr. Brandt.
I guess just for an informational point only in regard to the cell phone, since that's my industry, really I think what's happening also on top of that is that the infrastructure for the cell phone providers on that night were just overloaded. And therefore, there's only a certain bandwidth, and because of that, you get the immediate busy signal because just the bandwidth is not there for everybody to be accessing at once.
So your point is that it wasn't even getting off to the cell tower, maybe even.
Exactly.
Much less to 911. See, that's another flaw. And I've seen this. I knew this happened on 9/11 in New York City. The 911 system totally crashed, and the police and fire who were using cell phones could not, as backups, and had gotten used to using cell phones as backup, couldn't use them because the system just wasn't working. Now, in defense of the industry, of the cell phone industry, Mr. Brand works in the cell phone industry, Alderman Brand does. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, this will all be, I think, we're going to go to a wireless society. They'll get this worked out, but it's not worked out today. And in emergencies of a large breadth, the cell phones are not a reliable system. So this individual may not have even been getting to 911. You know, they just might have been, what do they say, system busy or try later kind of a thing. We don't know because we weren't there. But as a general rule, if you dial 911 in Elmhurst, there's backups to the backups to the backups, and I was surprised to hear that comment. So I'm glad we had an opportunity to get it out. I was in the middle of saying, thank you very much, Chief. You and your folks make us very proud all the time. I repeat this story every other year when we do the budget, which is that as a new mayor, I expected to get letters that complained about the police department. The officer was rude. The officer was tough. I don't know why I got a ticket. You know what? I get those letters. I get them regularly. But for every one of those letters, I get 2 or 3 letters complimenting our police officers for the great job that they do. And that was a surprise to me. And I think it's a credit to the fine professionalism of our force, the fine people, men and women that you have working for you and the training that they receive. They make us proud every day, and they do, in fact, protect life and property in our community. So on behalf of this council, I thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. I will pass that along to him. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Borchert, how are we doing here? We're getting somewhere, huh?
Yes, sir. I know you said
How long do you think Public Works will take about?
4 minutes.
Huh?
No.
What'd you say?
Said 1 minute.
1 minute? 4 minutes? All right, 4 minutes. So you have 4 minutes. I know that Mr. Borchert develops these agendas kind of aggressively. This is done to keep us on track and get us down the line as far as we can get. My guess is if we get done with Public Works tonight, Mr. Borchert, is that going to be a reasonable job to have gotten done tonight?
Get through a significant amount of public works, that'd be very good.
Yeah. Okay, let's try to get through as much of it as we can. Okay.
Public Works, as you would suspect, Public Works does have, as you would suspect, more of the cuts. They're not police, fire, essential public safety, so they have more of the reductions in service. Every department, though, I would say, has had a fair amount of reductions in budget authority. Ask Mr. Hughes to give you, again, the lowlights and then what we're pleased about being able to continue in providing service.
Yeah, very good.
Thought I only had 4 minutes. Yeah, we'll kind of go through some of the cuts and some of the things that we're not going to be doing this year that we've done in the past. I would say on the positive side, I guess looking at the glass half full, we've had an interesting last couple of years, as you all know, with water and snow. We've had probably 2.5 winters last winter. We've had about 2 winters this winter. And if you've ever plowed snow, it's an unpleasant all-night affair, especially on the second or third night. As you're also well aware, we've had a significant amount of rainfall. In the last 2.5 years, we've probably had 6 or 7 significant events. You know, people do say, well, the overtime is great, but there's a point where it becomes blood money. And as you all know, if you're in someone's basement that is filled with not so pleasant stuff, there's really not a paycheck that would help. And actually, on a lot of the flood-related stuff, a lot of that contact work is done by the management staff, which doesn't receive any overtime. So, as well as a lot of the higher management staff in the snow removal program, they're in all night or parts of the night for nothing. It's just part of their job. So, and I think that they have done an outstanding job in providing service in rather adverse conditions, and that's the men and ladies in Public Works. And I just think they do a really good job, and I'm very proud of everyone that works out there.
As are we. Okay, any questions of the Public Works Department? Anyone? How are we doing? Oh, Ms. Brandt.
Thank you. On page 137, this is going to hit a couple line items. 3002, asphalt patching, we're seeing an increase projected for 09-010. Line item 3011, concrete street rehab, we've seen a steady 100,000, and it used to be actually 150, I think, in previous years. Is there a rationale, especially, and I know I touched on this when we talked about the capital improvement fund before, the Northeast concrete streets are getting older by the day, 30-plus years old, and we're seeing a reduction in regards to the rehab for that area. Could I further details on that, please?
Right. Basically, the increase in patching is we're just seeing a lot more potholes out there, and we're trying to stay ahead of that. We'll monitor it because we're not having nearly as many utility cuts from new home construction. So, but just in general, we're seeing some deterioration. We don't know if it's an overall reduction in quality of asphalt, and it's just not lasting quite as long. So we're just trying to make sure we can keep the streets patched. I think everyone here has experienced Butterfield Road, Mannheim Road. I mean, when streets get like that, they're really dangerous and certainly not a feather in the cap of the community. Relative to the concrete streets, right now we continue to monitor northeast Elmhurst, and if in fact a street needs resurfacing right now, we would just put it into our normal paving program. We have that plan that has been done, so we don't see it yet, but we're afraid that when those streets start to deteriorate, because they were all built in a fairly short time frame, one would expect a deterioration to be in that same short time frame. So we're not at the precipice yet, but we have a plan for how we would approach it at that time. So as it's needed, we will put those things in the budget to take care of them. And if I could also add, the concrete patching is in the 100,000. In concrete streets, obviously, any asphalt patching, which we do, which would come out of our asphalt account, not the patching account, but the asphalt account. Those are temporary.
Yeah, a follow-up to that is, I do understand that that area does get the asphalt patching, which seems to, from my experience at least, pop out pretty quickly. And that's why to see well, at least at this point, the steady stream of the allocation for the concrete street rehab and the reduction from a few years ago is the reason why I bring that to question.
Yeah, I'd have to check back to see if there was some specialized project in there or something.
Okay.
There's none identified at this time.
Thank you.
If I may, before the next question, just to make sure I understand and I'm following the conversation, this is kind of ongoing repair as opposed to street rebuilding, the big program we have to completely pull out, pick out the curb and gutter and resurface, et cetera, right? That's not this.
That is correct. The asphalt patching is done by contract, and we do wrap that into the paving program. It's a separate item, not part of the 1.75 million.
Right.
Because we just get a good economy of scale if we get the big guy in here bidding on the big job, and oh, by the way, you've got to do these patches as well. So.
Okay. Okay, can I see a hand over here? Alderman Moriarty?
Yeah. My question is concerning item number 3055, the rear yard drain program, where it's decreasing from 75,000 to 50,000 for the projected. In light with the recent rain that Elmhurst and as well as all the other communities have experienced, do you think this is a wise cut at this point in time, because there has been so many backyards flooded that a lot of the residents would want or need assistance to keep the water away from their home?
Well, as you know, we have had a lot of events. We've been putting the budget together for some time, anticipating that the city would no longer contribute the $1,000 towards construction. We were anticipating a reduced amount of people going through through the city's program. Either it became not worthwhile from a cost perspective, or in our program they go into the queue where we can have them have their drain installed by the city's contractor. If they don't want to wait, they may go hire Acme Plumbing. So we're guessing at a reduction in the number that will go through the program, but we'll find out after this year.
To elaborate, it's still the city plan to provide the engineering expertise, the field work, the meeting with the residents, identifying the problem for the resident, provide that information for the resident, and then identify what could be done should they wish to proceed. This budget does not provide for city participation in this immediate next fiscal year, city participation in a rear yard drain construction. Engineering would provide evaluation and assistance and a plan, and then that information. If the resident would wish to proceed, The city, as I understand it, is receiving and working with the Public Works Committee and eventually with the City Council for a contractor that would be providing very cost-effective economy of scale benefits to the Elmhurst community for a rear yard drain installation, in that they would be prepared to respond to many rear yard drains, but the city wouldn't, as proposed, finance, as it has in the past, a percentage of that cost. Therefore, the resident would pay all of that cost himself to go forward this year, or they could wait until the city found a way to reestablish city financial support. Hopefully that explains. In addition, kind of the same situation on parkway trees and on public sidewalk remove and replace. No city participation. The city will provide review, identify a plan, put folks in line for when city resources would allow those programs to resume, but they would not go forward with city participation in this coming fiscal year.
If I can follow up with you, especially with the tree planting, there's been a couple of residents who had trees removed last year with the promise that they were going to have new trees this year. Is that in the budget and we're just not going forward with any additional new trees?
No, actually, we had about 400 trees removed last year, and none of those are in the budget, and all of them were told they will be getting trees this year.
I'm sorry?
They were all told they would receive a tree this year. We're starting a queue, and then when the money is reallocated into the budget, we'll start with those people, and they will be the first to receive a tree, and we'll just work our way back down to a zero backlog.
But let's be clear about this, in case someone's watching and make sure everybody's following this. If you're in line to get a tree, you're still in line to get a tree, but there aren't going to be any trees in the summer of 2009.
Correct.
Because we've been spending, what was that number we used to spend on trees? I should know it by now, 125 or so?
Yeah.
50.
Is that right?
150,000?
40.
It was
Somebody's looking at it.
100,000 on trees and about 50,000 on planting.
100,000 for the trees and about 50,000 for labor to put them in the ground.
Contract planting.
And how many trees will we get with that? Did you say about 400?
I believe so. I don't have the exact.
Well, that's
numbers.
going. This is another thing that's going to hurt. There are tens and tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of trees in Elmhurst. So 400 trees won't show in a year, but if this goes on 5 or 6 years, it's going to start to add up. And every year we lose trees in the parkway, they die of old age, if nothing else. So it's something that we hope we can restore the finances of the city as soon as possible, but I think it was a decision with some input from elected officials of the staff that this is the kind of place we have to go to save the kind of money we have to save to meet the requirements put on Mr. Borchard in terms of protecting our fund balance, hoping to add a little bit to the fund balance this year. We did not raise the property taxes this year. That's fine. That was a policy decision the council made. If we had raised the property taxes this year to the amount that was projected by the city officials, all these problems wouldn't go away. We're still in big trouble. And we're going to be in trouble for a while. Until the revenue streams of the city are restored by a healthy economy, this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen.
If I may?
Yes, sir.
And just as kind of a general reminder, the areas that we looked at in terms of, as Tom said, has been saying, core infrastructure, keep the house strong. We looked for things that, through deferment, don't end up costing more. In other words, if we don't pave streets, if we don't fix potholes, they grow and they get worse. Theoretically, it won't cost any more to plant a tree a year from now than it does today, with the exception of, obviously, cost of living.
If I can do a quick follow-up, sorry.
Yeah, if you want to follow up, sure.
Yeah, I do have a problem with this cut out of the budget because we are the tree city of Elmhurst, and with the additional water going into all the other yards, the trees definitely soak up a lot of the excess water. But I also know a lot of the residents from last year was told by certain individuals in the city to cut down some of the parkway trees and not to worry, that they were promised trees in the future, and now we're going to be saying, no, we're not going to do it, you have to wait a year or two before we have the funds. I know it's $100,000, but isn't there any place else in this budget that we would be able to cut the $100,000 so that we could do some of the tree planting in light of, you know, we have the emerald ash borer that's coming down, we have the Asian beetle, we've got a lot of other insects that may affect our trees, and to really not to stay on top of the stock that we currently have and to replenish the ones that we are losing. I think it's a shame for Elmhurst.
It is, I agree. Mr. Borchard, you looked like you were...
Well, page 3 is, I guess, the shortest summary I could identify that goes through the bad news. As a city manager in this community, this has been the most unpleasant budget preparation cycle that I've been through, but it's necessary. It is frankly necessary. I think we have to stay strategic and focused on the major items. I think it's very important, the council policy on maintaining fund balance if at all possible, and in that regard, next year there needs to be a contribution to fund balance, because not all of the revenue plan for this fiscal year worked exactly as it was originally intended. Therefore, we went below the minimum fund balance this year. Not all the revenue anticipated for this year came in because of the timing of the revenue. Therefore, next year needs to be a balanced budget without additional revenue. Without additional revenue, it's at least a $4 million reduction. It's about 10%. Maybe there's a good place to stop for our review tonight. But if you look at your own personal budget, family budget, whatever it is, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, whatever it is, take 10%. And unless 10% was being put in a coffee can that you didn't need to use, you are very adversely affected trying to reduce your budget by 10%. Think about it, 10%. And that's what the city is got to go through. It's a tough job for the elected officials, a tough job for staff, and frankly going to be a tough job for the community to understand that 10% reduction. But I firmly believe that the way to get through this is to keep the infrastructure strong. That's a significant investment we don't want to lose, and keep the staffing strong, another significant investment that's been put in place to serve the community. So when the money comes back, the other things can be added on. But here's the reduction of what had to be reduced, and would remind the council that we're actually using some revenue to make up that $4 million by using the rainy day working cash fund and not budgeting contingency. And we've also leaned on the capital improvement fund for $500,000. Alderman Moriarty was a strong advocate for, can't some of the street work be financed out of the capital improvement fund? We believe it would be fair to take about $500,000 of the heavier street investment work from the capital improvement fund in the past. But to get to 10% is tough, and the niceties that are very important for the Elmhurst community. I don't think any of these cuts are on a service or a program or a commodity that's not part of Elmhurst's value. But certainly flowers and trees and the extra special cleaning of streets, if you will, we gotta do something less to make up 10%.
Spanier?
Thank you, Mayor.
Go to John Gallup after that.
Well, a few questions. Waste disposal fees on page 137. A couple years ago, we had a lot of discussion about waste disposal, and I guess the landfill is filling up. Is that an issue any longer? Because the dollar amount seems to be pretty flat.
I think these are expenses in public works for disposal of some of the excavated materials as opposed to the garbage disposal fees.
That's sludge, right? No?
Yeah, those are
Sludge. No.
basically either spoil from pothole patching or just other repairs that the city does that we just can't take to a landfill. Those actually have to be handled by special waste. So we do try to segregate our piles so that we get the best price we can for getting rid of it, but it costs more to have asphalt hauled off than stone. But the stone is worthless because it's usually commingled with dirt, so that's what that is for.
Okay, thank you. Were you going to say something? Okay. Storm sewer cleaning, it's going up to $50,000 this year and then $50,000 next year, but yet it's been lower in previous years. Is that a new procedure we're going to be doing, based on the effect of all the rains we've had and so forth, that we're undertaking greater effort in cleaning these?
Line number,
Oh, yeah.
please.
Page 137, 3084.
Thank you.
Right. Actually, what that is we discovered we had a street cave-in on First Street out in front of the police station. When we dug it to repair it, we realized how badly filled the First Street sewer line is. There's a lot of debris in there and dirt in there, so we realized we got to clean it. So we've got to clean it all the way, I believe, to Addison. So we've got 50 grand in there for this year. If that doesn't get it done, we have 50 grand in to get it done for next year because it's obviously an important line.
Okay, thank you. Going to page 138, roadway improvements have jumped up considerably for this year, and is that certain areas that are being targeted for the $5.8 million roughly? And that again is 80-15 on page 138.
Right. What that is, there's a number of major projects in that account, and it does fluctuate year to year as projects move in, as future projects, and then are removed as they're completed. Basically, what's in there is $1.75 million for our normal street resurfacing program, $200,000 for concrete street repairs, $1.25 million in there for the Spring Road sidewalk program. And then we've got three projects. I'm sorry, there's $75,000 in there also for our portion of repairing St. Charles Road between Villa and Salt Creek. Villa Park is doing a project of redoing all of St. Charles Road. Over the years, through IDOT agreements, we own the north half of St. Charles Road between the bridge at Salt Creek to Villa, so we have $75,000 in there for our portion of that. And then there's three projects in there, actually two projects in there that are hoped to be paid for out of a federal grant through the stimulus program. Tom is coordinating, making application. One is an extra $1 million towards street resurfacing, and then the other is $1.5 million to do some street work on some pavement repairs to St. Charles between Poplar and York. But if the federal grants don't come in, we probably won't be doing those. But our hope is that those costs will be offset by federal grant money.
Let me ask you, you mentioned $1.25 million for the sidewalk for Spring Road?
Correct. There's a SSA that is in the process of possibly being created up there. We're planning on paving the road. We approached the business district to see whether or not they would be interested in doing some aesthetic improvements to the area. So we have decided, we're working with them to potentially construct all new sidewalk in the area, add nicer street lighting, the downtown street lighting, and several elements. It will be somewhat of a step-down version of streetscaping. It won't be brick pavers and that type of thing. And this goes all the way basically from the CN tracks to Villette.
So that's a program where they're going to pay also. The city pays. What's the downside of delaying that, given the budget constraints? Is there any downside since it hasn't been done yet anyway?
On the Spring Road one?
Yeah.
That's a city-funded one. That, if everything goes right, that should go forward. We actually looked at it last year when, hindsight being 2020, we realized we're paving Spring Road. We thought, geez, we're doing the roadway. Maybe we should approach the businesses. If they tell us not interested, then we'll just go ahead and pave it. They seemed interested, so we delayed the paving to this year, and we'll do a coordinated project from one end to the other and hopefully have a major impact on improving that area.
Okay, thank you. And land improvements on 8022, same page, 110,000. What is that for?
There's $80,000 in there for potential road improvement at York and Grand, aesthetic improvement to sidewalks and the entryway, and then we carry an annual $30,000 every year for processing of Park and Prospect. It's a former lust site that the city has cleaned up and is working with IPA to get it closed out, but we're not having a lot of success. So we continue to push them to try to get a closure plan from them and eventually get a no further remediation letter. So that's mostly engineering services and testing, 30 grand.
Okay, thank you. And let me ask the city manager, you made a comment before we started this segment about protecting infrastructure and staffing and so forth. With the reduction in basically new construction, you know, and we had code people for doing that and so forth, how has I guess the depressed economy affected us with regard to the labor force and whether or not, for example, I'm thinking in terms of we hire somebody to do street sweeping and they're using our equipment anyway, right from the garage, right? I mean, don't we hire a contractor to actually do it?
With their equipment. It's their equipment.
Oh, it's their equipment, okay, because that's right, okay, because I was wondering if we can go back to using our people, if necessary, to be doing some of the things that are contracted out.
Well, let's go back to where we were about 45 minutes ago. One of the things is that the demands on the building department are less because the number of new homes being built in town is much less, almost down to, not to zero, but we're running at a rate that might end up being, I don't know, 30 this year, as opposed to 230 4 years ago. So my point is that there's freedom down there in time, and one of the things they're doing with that is we're now doing all our own in-house inspections of the hospital project. We're not. We were one time expecting to pay for outside consultants to come in and do that at quite a number, and somebody was going to make a profit on that, marking up that labor and expertise. So that's an example of them attempting to control the costs as best as they can, hands-on. Mr. Gow's been waiting very patiently, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to return to the trees for a minute.
Okay.
Hypothetically, okay? I recognize that it's, and appreciate that it's a very difficult job to go through, for staff to go through and determine what they want to do, what needs to be done, okay? I want to pose a kind of hypothetical, okay? It's our job to then make the final decisions on this sort of thing, and I think hypothetically, if someone or someone's, and I know that Alderman Lomnicki's not here right now, but she has expressed concern in the committee about this, and we, of all the things that in Elmhurst, I'm sure we'll get feedback on is trees. I mean, this is Tree City USA town. I mean, what? Long comment shortened. If Alderman chose to find another item or combination of items that they felt might be postponed or whatever that would make up the approximate amount that the tree planting might cost, I wouldn't see any reason why, if they could make a case for it, that we couldn't consider it. I don't know, but and I don't have any magic formula in mind. I have looked at some items and thought, well, I don't know. Perhaps there would be people who would find something that's still to be discussed and examined that might substitute for that kind of loss.
Okay, Mr. Gow, let me thank you for your comments and your impression.
I wouldn't trade positions in the world to have to go through what...
Let me share with you my impressions of this problem. This is a big problem. You know, on the one hand, we have folks out there looking in tonight who might easily say, oh, a tree is a fluff and it's an extra and it's something you don't really need. And there are other people, and I think I would count myself in the second group, who would say, this is Elmhurst, and we need to do this. One day, Mr. Borchard, I hope you recall, I was perusing this document in my office, and Mr. Borchard came in, and I looked up and I said, if we cut out all the tree planting, we won't get that Tree City USA plaque like we get every year. And Mr. Borchard said, yes, that's correct. And we've gotten that plaque, I don't know, every year for 25, a long, long time. So that would be a tragedy. Now, again, somebody looking in might say, oh, who cares about the plaque? But I want to just share with you, Mr. Borchard, we don't have to solve this tonight, but I will also recall that one year we went through this budget, and everybody can see how big it is and how detailed it is. I hope you get a sense from that, watching it on TV, how detailed this is, and particular this is, and every dollar is accounted for here. We went through this budget once about 12 years ago, and the only change made in the whole budget from staff recommendation to what was eventually passed was an adding to the tree budget. Do you recall that year? Okay. So, I'm getting the sense, and the folks on this dais are in fact the policymakers for our city, that we do not want to see this eliminated. And by eliminated, I mean brought to zero. So, you have some time. Help us look around and try to find something else. Maybe we can't bring it all the way. Maybe we can make it, you know, some of these programs that we're eliminating. Let me ask you this, Mr. Borchard, just a real simple yes or no. When a tree dies in a parkway, the normal thing is a tree dies in a parkway and the city comes by, the city takes it away, and it's a city tree, so the city then plants it, right? So there's no charge to the homeowner for replacing that tree in the parkway where there was a tree.
Correct.
Okay. Maybe we're going to have to make it a shared expense. Maybe some people won't like that, but maybe better that than no tree. Maybe we need to bring back a third of this program or 50% of this program. But to go to zero, I think, you know, if you absolutely put your foot down and tell us it has to be, and you've pretty much done that already, but, you know, the kids are acting up here, Mr. Borchard. We want what we want, and we want our trees. And I think, I'm just speaking for me and my neighbors. My neighbors want their trees. I think your friends and neighbors want their trees. I think that Elmhurst is a unique and wonderful community, and you know, there's, as Alderman Moriarty started to talk about, they soak up water in the rain, they provide shade that saves energy expense in the house. In the summer, the leaves drop off them in the winter, and the house gets the sun in the winter, and so they produce oxygen, they're healthy for the planet.
Sold.
Okay. All right, I'll be quiet. You get my drift. Okay.
If this wasn't the year that it is, with this council needing to approve the spending side, and a council that I can't talk to right now being in charge of taking over and doing the revenue side, it would be easier. You look on page 86, that's this graph that we've been talking about for years, and I call it sometimes the X factor. The X factor is causing the black line to go down. The X factor meaning money spending up and money revenue down, causing the fund balance to drop. The very good news is we're projecting at the end of this fiscal year that there'll be between $7 and $8 million in the bank. That provides the city council a lot of flexibility, but it's your policy that says stay in the blue. Don't go below the blue. Well, because of the timing of the home rule sales tax, we crashed through the bottom of the blue. We're trying to get it back into the blue. If there could be a commitment to identify creating some fund balance surplus, we get back into the blue. There's resources, there's capabilities, there's an opportunity that I think the community wants, the council deserves to have, and that is to be able to make a decision to do what needs to be done. I certainly support that trees need to be done. but that's 150,000. There's 3.85 other thousands of dollars that need to be addressed as well.
3.85 million of other
Right.
needs.
So keeping that strategic magnitude involved, you've got options. You've still got $7 million in the bank, but we can't, I don't believe, responsibly spend without understanding a commitment to refund the working cash fund and reestablish a push for the general fund balance to get back into what Standard & Poor's also said was a very solid policy of yours, which is you don't go below 3 to 4 months.
Well, okay. No one in this council can make a commitment for what's going to happen in the fall and what's going to happen over the course of the summer and the fall in terms of revenue streams, because amongst other things, you're not going to have the same council. That's a given. Some people are retiring, so there's no way we can do this. And this is part of the problem that all new aldermen encounter quickly here, which is, wait a minute, we do the revenue at one time of the year and we do the expenses at another time of the year, and they're out of sync, and which one is really the first one and which one is the follow. It's not a great situation the way it's done here in the state of Illinois, but this is what is forced on us by state statute. Different schedules for these things. So we try to do the best we can. Let's just leave it at this. I'm not asking you for an answer tonight. I'm just asking for recognition that you hear us and you'll try to address this to the best of your ability within the parameters that we've given you. Correct? Okay, Mr. Mulliner, you wanted to add something to this discussion?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
And this goes back to the trees as well, because I agree, I love trees just like everybody else does. However, at the same time, the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is what we focused on and what you focused on as a staff, and that is making sure that we're providing those core obligations that we have, safety and public works. And I think that that's more important than a set of trees. If we have to give up $150,000 worth of trees for 1 year to make sure that we've got streets that are drivable, police that can do their job, and the fire department that can do their job, I'd rather do that for 1 year than I would to find $50,000 or $150,000 by noodling a little bit out of the fire department, a little bit out of the police department. So let's make sure that as we're doing this, we really think carefully about what we're taking money out of to bring trees back in.
Okay. Mr. Nybo?
I'll make a similar observation. I'm not sure we need to go beyond 3 lines on this one, to tell you the truth. I'm looking at 0809, our budget for DED, Dutch elm, and ash removal. That's line 30-88. In combination with lines 30-52.
Sorry, Mr. Nybo, you got a page for me, sir?
Page 143?
43? Thank you.
143?
143, thank you.
It's lines 30-52, 30-77, and 30-88. That's what we approved last year. The combination of those 3 figures is about $430,000. But what we've actually spent this year, and I'm presuming that there's some cost-cutting already taking place with our tree program, is about $270,000. That's what we're anticipated to spend this year. And we're also anticipated to spend about that same amount for those 3 line items in this proposed budget, but all of that amount is being allocated to tree removal, $264,000. So why couldn't we just budget, say, about $170,000 for tree removal, which is what we're estimated to spend this year, and then just put the extra $100,000 toward tree planting? And then if there's a situation where we do have a big outbreak of Dutch elm or ash borer, and we're going to have to do a lot more removal than planting, then we tilt the balance a little bit.
Okay, Mr. Nybo, that's a great suggestion, but I'm trying to buy Mr. Borchert some time here, a week, to look at it. Do you concur?
Sure, I agree.
Okay. So now, Mr. Borchert, you've heard that suggestion. There's a way. There's other ways. We will look to you for your recommendation as to what's the best way. I think that Mr. Nybo's way is a fine way. But there might be other ways to do this as well. I will take the opportunity to say this ash removal thing is coming at us like a freight train. It's just coming at us like a slower freight train than they expected a couple of years ago. But I've been told flat out by people who claim to know about such things, I don't know about such things, that basically every ash tree in northern Illinois is going to be dead in 10 years. And that's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tree removal that's going to fall on the collective suburban communities of the city of Chicago. Our share is going to be, I don't know, 2-3 million is a reasonable number. Some towns are claiming quite a bit more than that. So can you imagine this? Here we are sweating with this budget, the basic problem with which is not overspending, but of lack of revenue because of what has happened in the greater economy. We're $4 million short, and now some tree guy shows up and says, oh, I got more good news for you. You're going to have to cut down $4 million worth of trees in the next 10 years, and that doesn't produce any wealth or any quality of life in our community. It just provides safety that these trees don't fall and kill people. Because they will. That's why you have to take them down. You can't ignore them. If you leave them there, they will eventually fall and hurt people. So I'm going through this to give both the reporter in the room and the people watching in on television a sense of the kind of things that we try to struggle with here and balance all these things out. But I think we can leave it at this, and I'd ask us to leave it at this point, that Mr. Borchard has heard this discussion, and we look forward to a recommendation to save, at least in some manner, in some measure, some tree planting budget, taking into consideration what you heard from the council. Okay, Alderman Gukoff?
I'd just like to add that I think personally I'd be more inclined to support continual funding of an ongoing program rather than anything new that we would try to add into the budget. That I think as an organization, as a city, we have a stronger obligation to maintain ongoing programs than we do to add new programs that would increase our burden, our financial burden. And I'd be more inclined to try to support this or any other program that we're looking at cutting rather than anything that we have not yet funded that we wanted to add to our budget.
Understood. Okay, Mr. Brand?
Thank you. One thing I guess to add to being passionate, please, here on page 137, we already kind of touched on it, light item 3070, sidewalks, and sidewalks. I assume that the reduction for this is the 50-50 replacement program, but my lead-in question is this also eliminating any 50-50 for new sidewalks of areas that don't have them today?
No, new sidewalks that would be part of a special service area would be possible. This is a reduction in the remove and replace program. We'll do asphalt to make sure that hazards are mitigated, but concrete, remove and replace the sidewalk on what commonly referred to as a 50-50 program is being curtailed until the budget can be reestablished in a more balanced fashion. Then folks that are on the list would be contacted.
Okay, so follow up to that. Because it is 50-50 even for the new sidewalks as well, what you're stating is that program will continue this year.
Infrastructure. Folks, I felt that from an investment in the community, if a neighborhood wished to, from a special service area, impose a tax upon themselves and improve their neighborhood, that would be an appropriate investment which the city should match, which the city has traditionally matched in building the quality of the community. So special service area financed new improvements are provided for.
That's definitely good to hear, especially since we established a policy. The ball seems to start rolling now, and I would hate to stop that ball from rolling. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Nybo.
What's the story on salt? You know, I heard some stories about allegations that there's some inappropriate price fixing, for lack of a better term, with sellers of salt. You know, I see our line item, our actual expenditures this year is more than double of what we anticipated, and I think that some of it is because the cost is significantly higher. And are there things that we can do as a municipality to look into that? Are we looking into that?
Elmhurst is part of the Council of Governments through the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference and frankly, Illinois Municipal League as well, that's working with the state to look into how the salt supply industry responded to Illinois' need for bids. Elmhurst was a part of that through the state. Elmhurst, for some reason, I think because of Mr. Hughes and his whole department's great work, got a very good price. It's a higher price, but a very good price compared to many other communities. As an example, Villa Park, maybe it's E for Elmhurst and V in the alphabet, but Elmhurst price was $58 a ton. Villa Park's price on the same process, Villa Park, $120 a ton. I'd like to say it's Elmhurst does a better job. I think it's part of the alphabet. We don't know what it was that made that happen. But it was the same bid through the state of Illinois to the salt suppliers and manufacturers, and that's how it came out. That seemed right. Elmhurst actually benefited reasonably so, but we've got to participate in that same bid process, and we don't know what's going to roll out. But there's a lot of attention been placed on it by the Attorney General's office and others, and we'll see.
So we're still waiting for some information, though? I mean,
Correct.
It's
There's
not
still,
finished.
I think, an ongoing investigation. They're going to bid it. We know how the process works. Mr. Hughes, Public Works for Elmhurst bids, I think, request the right amount of salt. We're part of that process.
Let me follow up to that question, which is, of this great increase which Mr. Nybo pointed out, how much of that is greater volume, greater number of pounds or tons of salt that you used, as opposed to the unit cost going up?
Well, the winter and winter effort was about twice a normal winter effort, and the unit price for salt is probably 40% higher.
It went from $38 a ton last year to $58 a ton this year, so close to doubled. And because of last year's severe winter, we depleted our entire salt supply. We tend to end up having some portion of our supply left at the end of the year, 800 tons, 1,000 tons, and we went basically to zero last year. So this year, I think we ordered 4,500. We had to order 4,500, which replaced that as well as beefed us back up a little bit. So we ordered more, and we had about an 80% increase in price.
Okay. It looked to me for a while, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, that you were kind of actively holding back on salt usage for a little bit. My neighbors noticed that the side streets particularly were a little, they weren't down to the, and I'm not criticizing the snow plowing job. It's not the driver's, not anybody's fault, but it's a reality that you would either turn down the amount, however you do that, I don't know. Am I right along?
We did sort of modify it. We basically ended up doing 4 passes of plowing, but we only salted the center of the road because that allows 2 things. One, it gives each side to have, it ends up in about a 10 to 15 foot swath that eventually melts, allows each driver to have 1 tire on there, and that brine slowly works its way over. So, but it was an attempt to conserve and not run out of salt because we really were blowing through it real fast.
Well, I'll share with you that some people complained to me about it and some people praised us for it, for both the reasons. One, it wasn't as curb to curb, but people were already through the media aware that there were issues with finances and that we were trying to conserve the resources. So I think it was a mixed reaction, as you would expect.
I have nightmares where I wake up in an empty salt shed.
Sounds like a nightmare. All right, very good. Alderman Moriarty?
I'd like to add a little bit more to this. Have we looked at other alternative substitutes to salt? I know that a lot of other communities were using some type of combination of soy sauce with others.
We've used several additives before,
Okay.
Mixed results. They don't really do much. Some people have attempted to have what they call a de-icer, where you actually spray a liquid on the road, but the size of the atomization of the liquid, the temperature when it goes down, the temperature of the pavement, all can go wrong. And the county tried it one time, I think it was 83 in Thorndale or something, and they turned the entire 27-leg intersection into like it was coated with Vaseline. So it's really a difficult thing to do. So we do use calcium chloride. Salt is only good down to about 20 degrees to melt stuff, regular salt, and then we add the liquid sodium chloride, calcium chloride, which then allows it to go down to 0. So, and we also cut it with sand quite a bit this year, which unfortunately still is out there. You can see it in the streets. It's not pretty, but we are sweeping currently, so.
Yeah. All right, Alderman Shea?
Yeah, on page 144, number 8006 for vehicles for 170,000. Explain that.
Well, every year, all of the vehicles that are in the vehicle replacement schedule, they then just put into the operating budget. So I don't have exactly which vehicles that is. It's just one. In that case, it's our Prentice loader, which is that log picking machine you see. That's what's being replaced next year.
I was just wondering because I thought we weren't going to purchase any new vehicles.
We deferred, I think, close to $450,000 of vehicles, but this is a onesie. We got one Prentice loader, so it's harder to defer. If it goes down, we don't have that capability.
Right.
Okay. All right, anyone else? All right, well, a lot of great questions. I think, Mr. Hughes, you are, as you heard at the beginning there, kind of third in line relative to your public safety counterparts, and that puts you kind of behind the 8 ball, but we appreciate you, obviously, as you described, with working with the salt and some of these other things, trying to make do with less, trying to stretch every dollar. That skill is going to be something we're going to rely on more and more in the coming months and maybe even years as we try to make do. I think you're hearing from, holistically, whether we're talking about snow plowing in the center of the lane, or the tree replacement, or the sidewalk replacement, or the year round. I think what you're reflecting there is what Mr. Borchert has pointed out to us many, many times, which is that the citizens of Elmhurst expect and demand a high level of service. And they've been used to getting it. And some of these cutbacks are not comfortable, but we don't have unlimited resources, and as we know, we have gone significantly through a large portion, not the whole way, as Mr. Borchert pointed out, but over the last 3 years or so, we've dug significantly into our rainy day fund. It's been raining for a while now, and it doesn't seem to be letting up. So it'll be a trick to see how long we can continue to levitate this demand. But thank you for your efforts in any case. I really appreciate you do a great job, and your people make us proud all the time. They keep the city looking sharp, and they do a great job, and I appreciate it very much. I'll tell that one story. I tell the story of, without naming names, but I heard this story about, this gives you the life of a public works guy. They get called out one night, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, on a frozen main, water bubbling up in the street. Just, it's a mess. It's like a geyser. And they have to go out in the dark. It's the winter. That's when mains freeze. And this happened to be Christmas Eve. And, can you imagine getting called away from your family as you're sitting down to dinner on Christmas Eve and have to go into work over to Elmhurst? A lot of these folks don't live in Elmhurst, but they take care of Elmhurst. And they came in, and they did the job. And the story that I heard from the folks was that the fellow who lived in the house in front of where the geyser was came out while they got the street completely torn up, and the fellows are down in the hole. By the way, it's like about 20 degrees out. It's really, really cold. It's dark. It's Christmas Eve, and the guy complained, "What are you tearing up my street for in the middle of my Christmas Eve dinner? I have guests here." And it just kind of, that's just the life of these folks, and they do it. They don't complain. I heard the story. It wasn't presented to me as a complaint. It was just presented to me as a story from the street. So this is the kind of real life experiences that they go through every day, and I appreciate it, and I've always appreciated it, and you've always done a great job, and always made us very proud to be associated with you. So thank you very much, and share that with your people. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Borchard, it's 10 to 11. I think we covered a lot of ground tonight. I don't know if we covered as much as you wanted to or not, but I'm thinking we're pretty much done, and we'll be back at it a week from tonight. Is that correct?
I would just announce that our intent would be after the council meeting, the regular council meeting, we would break and go into committee of the whole format to resume, but would bring in our visitors from outside City Hall, the library board and the museum.
Okay.
And then get back at claims and what follows Public Works in our own general fund budget.
All right. That sounds reasonable. And again, I'll extol you as always to keep us on schedule. If we start to fall behind, let us know. I'm not crazy about working any overtime, any Wednesdays or Thursday nights or anything like that, so let's keep pushing it as hard as we can. Hopefully we'll get through the council meeting next week in quick order. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. I know it's late. This is the budget process. Probably over half a year ago, we talked about that Bensonville Fire Protection District, and I assume nothing changed. We're going to continue to fund that, but maybe next week or something during a meeting you could give us an update on it.
There has been some movement on it, actually.
Good, good.
Mr. Mulliner?
I can give you the basic update. There's been some changes. I know that Mr. Borchard and Chief Kopp were going to be meeting with that Fire Protection District shortly to talk about 3 different options. They have paid us as much as they can, as much as they were able to receive for this year, but the next move is going to be in their hands as far as which direction they want to go, and there are 3 options on the table that they're going to be talking with that area about.
All right, thank you.
They did get a little bit of the catch-up, not a big chunk of it, but a little bit of it, and our folks are convinced that they did everything they could do. So, okay? All right, with that, I believe I need a motion to adjourn our committee of the whole. Alderman Mulliner moves, Alderman Gow seconds. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, that motion carries.